ladies and gentlemen, back to the 2024 URL Karting Championship. You're here joining us at round 4. This is the race event at Blyton Park at the Race Kart Centre, following on from his previous video which covered all the action from the qualifying session that we had here. So it was Dan McLaughlin who set the fastest lap in the qualifying session ahead of Elliott. Steve Jackson was then in third ahead of Davison. Cave fifth ahead of myself, and really struggled out there to match the pace of some of the guys up at the front. I was just ahead of my brother Gary, and then we had Jordan, Housley and Hopkins to round out the order in terms of the pace, the single lap pace that everyone set in the half-hour qualifying session that we had. There was quite a gap between the karts that was quite evident from some of the footage, where you see some karts absolutely take off from corners and other karts just really sluggish and wouldn't go anywhere. I think the kart that we had was probably somewhere towards that bottom end, but did struggle to keep up with those front runners. The race is then going to be reverse grid, so those that finished at the front will start at the back, so perhaps a chance for those that struggled to defend track position out there when it's an actual race format. So taking a quick look at the championship standings after the qualifying. So we've taken the qualifying points and added them into the total championship standings, and it's still myself that leads, but that gap is now down to single digits for the first time in a few races, as McLaughlin, who set the fastest lap, so took 4 points and the bonus for the fastest lap in that previous race, drags that gap down to 9. Davison's then 9 behind him. We've then got Horton and Glover, who are both absent from this event. And next up, Cave is only 12 points behind them, so provided he doesn't have an absolute shocker in the race, stands a really good chance of managing to jump them both. We've then got Wasp just 3 points ahead of Blake, who had a really solid qualifying in P2, and then Chef Hopkins, who really struggled out there, got jumped after qualifying in terms of the standings, is just a point behind Blake. We've then got his big rivals in Gary and Craig. Gary 14 points behind him and Craig a further 6 down. Divine's then missing from this one, with Jackson just 5 points behind him on his return, so he will certainly get jumped by the time this event is over. The bottom 4 now are all still absent from this one. So to have a look at the starting grid then, it's obviously the opposite order to what we'd mentioned earlier in terms of the finishing position. So Chef Hopkins starts on pole ahead of his big rival Housley. Wass is then in there in P3 ahead of Gary Miller. There's myself in 5th, so on the inside, coming into that first corner, really disappointed, to be fair, to be that far up the grid. I was hoping for much better, but really struggled with the kart out there, just ahead of Ed. Davison, who looked quick all the way through it, wasn't far off. That battle for the top 4 in qualifying starts just behind myself, ahead of Jackson. Blake, who has really been improving recently, but to see him right up there in P2, really had a stormer out there in qualifying, starts on the back row, just ahead of McLaughlin, who took full points from qualifying. What can he do from the back of the grid with that lightning fast kart he's managed to draw here? So here we go, as we pull up onto the grid for the first time. It's a shake of the head. The lads ahead, looking back, getting a bit of banter there from Wass. I'd have expected to have been further forward. And then we've got an outlap, just so that all the karts should register. Unfortunately, this didn't help with the timings in the end, as the venue managed to mix everyone's karts up. But a quick outlap to line back up on the grid, try and get a bit of heat in the tyres. And then here we go, we rejoin on the grid as all the lads are joining onto the back. And here comes the green flag, and it's away we go. And it's terrible start from Gary on the left. Look, we've already jumped him. The 3 in front all get a good launch, to be fair. We struggled a little bit. Wasp fighting on the outside of Housley. Housley holds on to the position. We're right onto the back of Wasp now. Chef continues to lead this pack. We've got Davison there. You just saw his nose trying to poke up the inside, trying to force a way through. We go wide, looking for a way through on Wasp. We see the opportunity, but it's closed off. We're still stuck in P4 here. We don't know what's happened to Gary. He's dropped back. Davison's the man that's on his tail as we chase Wasp down. He was chasing Housley down as the chef leads, and he runs a little wide and opens it up, and we make the most of that, and we're going to follow that right through, and we're going to go through on Housley as well, and we're up into P2 just as the lap comes to an end. We've now got the chase on with the chef. Not sure who it is that's in there behind me at this point, but there's a look over the shoulder there as we're hoping and praying that people are being held up. We're going to go for a launch up the inside on Chef. It's a slide wide, there's a little bit of contact. We do squeeze Chef a little bit there towards the wall, so apologies, it was a little bit rascal, but we've made it through. And we've survived, and we look back, and I think at this point, from memory, Chef did, and the lads behind managed to hold up the likes of Davison that were in the really pacey karts, so we hope to make the most of that. We then jump forward a good sort of 5-10 minutes here of where we were just running at the front. You can see the lads there on the other side of the barrier. They're all really closing in, shaking the kart, trying to get it to go faster. It wasn't a terrible exit from that corner, but then you'll see as we start to come around here, we're looking over his shoulder as frantically as we are, because there's the nose of another car as Davison goes flying through to take the lead of the race. We'll do his best to try and hang on to his coattails. We're starting to come up on some back markers. It looks like Gary Miller, who obviously started alongside us on the grid, had a terrible launch, just couldn't get going. He was complaining that he was having issues with his brakes all the way through qualifying. Perhaps that's still haunting him as well. So he's really struggling. Davison coming onto the back of him now. We're chasing down as best we can. You can see we can't keep up with the pace that Davison's kart has. We're shaking and shaking the kart, doing his best. Davison there makes the move. Can we squeeze through as well? I think Gary sees us coming and just leaves us that extra bit of room in that window. We close up here through the slower speed, look. It's a really solid line through there, but then we just don't have the low end acceleration. So you'll see it again here, look. Davison's kart just starts to pull away and he can make moves. He's got past, this is Chef, that was right up there just when we last saw him. He was running P2, we just squeezed past him, but he's not an happy man as he sees Davison go past. He was really struggling with his kart. And there you go, we'll look to the left and it's McLaughlin. We were under pressure all that time. His kart, another one that's lightning quick. He goes up the inside, Chef's forced wide. I think Chef might have pulled into the pits at this point. So we follow McLaughlin through that gap. We're down into P3 and we'll continue to try and chase Dan down. So here we go, sweep through the left-hander. And then you just see his kart pull away. There's a big shake of the head there, as you can obviously feel that when you're sat in the kart. Here we go, so we try and take as much momentum into that corner as we possibly can. And there's only a couple of kart lengths between us. You can see the lads in behind chasing down. And that couple of kart lengths, look at where it is now. It's, 10 kart lengths maybe? He's just absolutely left us for dead. And that wasn't a particularly poor exit from that corner. Just shows the gulf. But what can McLaughlin do in terms of chasing Davison down? We can just see him still up there ahead of us. And McLaughlin is lightning quick. Obviously the fastest man in qualifying, so we know he's got some pace in that kart. Can he do enough to catch up Davison and take the lead? There's the next couple of back markers we're coming up on too. Will they have any kind of impact? Rejoin the action here, look, and there is a kart backwards and it's McLaughlin. We're not sure exactly what happened. He was a bit further up the road than we were, but he'd had an absolute shocker. Now look at the momentum that he's lost in coming out of that corner. He's had to start from dead, whereas we had the momentum. which should mean we're absolutely alongside, but it's just not the case. His kart is just that much quicker. You saw the hand raised as if to say, what is going off here? How can you compete? It's such a shame because it's such a great little circuit, but dropping onto a good kart absolutely decides who wins here. It has been the same way when we've raced here previously. I've been on the receiving end of one of the good karts and one of the fortunate ones at previous races, but this time I am struggling. There is a yellow flag. It looks like it's G Miller there, other side of the barrier again, really slowing down for that yellow flag in there. Those karts in behind us though suspiciously do seem much closer than they did on the previous lap. So once again here you'll see McLaughlin take off into the sunset as we do his best to just cling on to anything we can. Is the gap from that spin now enough for Davison to hold on for the win of the race? Still a little ways to go yet, so we'll have to wait and see. G Miller's still there. I think they swapped his kart, at this point. But then look again, as we slow down for the yellow flags, those lads in behind just don't quite slow as much and have really made up some ground. Some sneaky tactics, I think, there. You are supposed to slow to sort of half pace at least when you're under the yellow flag conditions. I'm not sure those couple of lads in behind us. I think it's Blake and Jackson and Cave that are all chasing us down at this point. Don't seem to be quite slowing as much as we were through there. But myself and McLaughlin coming up onto some back markers. Could this have a bit of an impact? G Miller notably not in the barrier as we come round this time, so he seems to have got away now in his new kart. See what he can do there. McLaughlin flies through that gap, where that was, has left him plenty of room to get past. No blue flags out here as we don't have enough stewards, but he's done well with that. Could it be Housley potentially? I think it is Housley that we've come up on here. There's been another one really struggling, but there you go. There's one of the chasing pack. I believe that's Elliott. It was obviously P2 in qualifying, all over us, and we're having to check a shoulder. Housley waves us through quite courteously. Here we go. Got to take quite a tight line in there. Shaking the kart again, trying to get as much as we can. This kart just really struggled at low end acceleration. There was just no power at the low end. Once we get up to the top end, we're not too bad, but by that point, the karts that we're fighting against are too far gone. So we're constantly looking over the shoulder, so Elliott must be right there, fighting to get past. As we come up on another of the lapped cars here, looks like this one might be Wass that we're coming up on through this left-hander. Another shake of the head as we just lose so much momentum if we make any sort of mistake. Try and keep it wide, look for a way through. We look to get tight, we get a little bit caught up there trying to find a way past Wasson. That's allowed Elliott alongside us. We do leave him the room, we don't run him into the barrier there, but then once we're given that bit of space, there's just no stopping him. I say once we get to this sort of point and we're at the top end of the karts, this kart that I'm in seemed to almost be competitive, but getting to that point was such a struggle. Elliott was much better coming out of the low speed, particularly out of this bottom hairpin. So we'll do his best to chase him down. Wass obviously there. Will he have an impact on what happens here? Elliott gone for a move straight away on him. Wass holding his own, moving along, just pulling away from that left barrier a little bit just to make sure he's holding the racing line. And here we go, he stays tight, runs wide. I think about a move up on Elliott, but there's not quite. We can't get quite far along in the side enough. But then this time, Wass runs a little wide into that first corner. Elliott gets through. We can't quite manage it. Wass is still there, he's still there. And then he just backed out a little bit as we come into that second left-hander there. And we're through. But Elliott has a couple of kart lengths on us now. So here we go. We get a good run through there. We've closed it right up. Look, there's just a kart length between us here. And then you'll watch as we just cannot close that gap for the life of us. We've got a much better exit from that corner, and all it does is bring us level. And again, get into the faster pace bit, and there you go. Look, this is where our kart comes to life, but it's only right as we're coming back up to this hairpin. We get a better line through there, which puts us right alongside him. But then we're back into a low speed section, which is where we really struggle. So we can't make a move through here. We already know that's not possible. Gary looking over both shoulders, trying to see where we are. Elliot a little bit more hesitant on the brakes in there. We've taken a better line again, but this time it's just not enough. We almost get alongside, but it's not enough to be able to fight him. And low end, again he pulls away. Here we go into the fastest section of the track as we sweep right. Our car starts to catch. We come through here, but then there's just nothing doing. So we want to get nice and tight through here to try and keep the line, but we can't do much to get past him at this point. Back down to the hairpin. What can we do? Thinking about a dive up the inside. We think better of it. We get a better run again, but then there's a little bit of contact because we've got more momentum coming out the corner, and that just kills what little low end speed we had as we watch Elliot again, frustratingly just a kart length or so ahead of us. We close up in the high speed, but then it all tightens up again, and that's another move, another opportunity. Not quite able to take it. We'll continue to follow him. His new race suit, his new helmet. We've got a good look at it at this race as we were following him for some time. Here you go, he goes really wide. We get a really good line. We've got so much better line. But then look, as he gets his foot down, he just pulls that couple of kart lengths again. So the opportunity that we had starts to disappear. But with that little bit closer, can we think about a move? Possibly coming into here, we're still not close enough. You could maybe go for a launch into that one, but it takes a nice tight line through there. Continue to frustratingly sit behind him, lap after lap. There you go, you can see some more of the lads that we're coming around to see. Again, we get a much better run through that corner. He's run wide, but this time again there's contact as the two lines cross each other, and it just kills our momentum, gives him that little shunt to get him up to speed, which is the last thing that we need as we're trying to catch him up. Here we go, another lap completed, watching the back of this kart. Here we go again, we try and come nice and wide. Can we get the run this time? Again, Elliot's that bit wider. We've managed to get a much better run, and we've managed to stay close this time because of how much of a better run we had. This is as close as we've been, and as we start to get back towards the high speed and we're closing, and we've thought about a move, we've got alongside him, we're pushed onto the grass a little bit, and Elliot forces us into that first tyre. Back end kicks out and he manages to catch it. A really great save on his part, but he really does shut that door on us coming through the fastest corner on the circuit. Hair-raising moment, agonisingly close to getting the move done, and we'll think about it again, look, but this time it's not as good an exit. We need to absolutely nail that corner and have him make a mistake to allow that sort of opportunity. That could be the last one that we get. Another run into this corner, and we ended up really close. Thought about a dive up the inside, but then thought better of it. Ended up trying to keep the kart straight so we didn't lock it up, and we've just really wide, and that's really given Elliot all he needed in terms of a gap. So we'll fast forward a little bit now, as you'll pretty much be watching the same thing that you've just watched for the last sort of half a dozen laps of us just following him around, just at the gap's that bit bigger now. There's no chance of a move. He does have a couple of looks over his shoulder, but we're not close enough to really challenge. You'll see us close up a little bit through this lower speed section, and then as he pulls away, well, here we go. Big lock up there, smoke puff from his back tyres as he locked up into there as we come up onto a back marker. As Gary Miller gives plenty of room, allows him through. He's seen us coming as well. That's really great awareness there, to make sure you're not getting in the way of the faster karts, particularly through that quick section. As much as it can be a lot of fun having that fight, can potentially lead to someone landing in a barrier. So we'll go back to fast forward mode until we hit another bit of action, which doesn't come too much later as we come up on our next back marker. We're coming round this double left hand section. Elliott closing the gap. Could it be potentially Housley looking from here? He has a look over his shoulder. He's right where Elliott doesn't want him to be, and it's given us a huge opportunity as we pulled alongside. Craig's decision here is going to be the one that makes it, but he's pulled to the left to let Elliott through on the right, and that's, if he'd have gone the other way with that one, it could have been us that he let through. But now we're back at the high end. Can we get anywhere? No, with a little touch of the bodywork against Elliott's there, and that was enough to just kill any run that we had. Elliott did well there, just moved across enough to make sure there wasn't a run up on the inside, but it has closed this gap back up. Can this possibly mean that we've got another chance to get back at him? Not like that. We've got far too excited. Just like in qualifying, that exact same corner. Too excited, coming into it, too hot on the brakes as we try to turn, and it just spins the kart round. So here we go. We've then jumped forward as we didn't see anything for a little bit, and we're on to the last lap, I think, now here, if I'm not mistaken, as we have to make a move up the inside of Gary. And that's really cost us in terms of our line. And there goes Jackson as he just manages to squeeze through. We've not seen him all race. He's been slowly hunting us down. And then we come round to the checkered flag. So on the last lap, we've thrown away P4. A lot of fun out there. Got to say, I had a lot of fun fighting with everyone. As much as we were a little bit handicapped by the kart. It's a great little circuit. It's, as I've said a few times during these last couple of videos that have taken place here at the Race Kart Centre, it's just such a shame, because if these karts were all even, preferably at the top end, and all quick, but even if they were just all even and somewhere in the middle, it'd make for some great racing around this circuit, and you just sort of miss out on some of the opportunity for some great racing, some great footage, some great action because of the gap in the karts. You could see the lads at the back struggling even more than I was, so I probably got a mid-range kart in there, but sort of particularly Housley, Miller and Hopkins were all really struggling with their karts out there, so it's such a shame, to the point at which when we saw Chef pull into the pits quite early on in that race, he got out the kart and he went home. He left the event completely. Just really frustrated with it. He'd already been lapped a few times by some of the front runners. Wasn't able to keep up with those that he had a big rivalry with because of issues with the kart, and he just wasn't enjoying himself, so he left the venue, which is never something that we want. I put a lot of effort into trying to organise these events and make them as fun for everyone to attend as possible. So a real shame there, and I am sorry to the lads that have suffered out there. Unfortunately, it's something that's just out of my hands when it comes to mental karting. So fingers crossed it balances out a little bit. I know that certainly Blyton's lost a few votes, certainly for the next few races, based on the performance that we saw from some of the karts out there. But then some of the lads had a great time. I had a great time despite being frustrated, and then those up at the top really enjoyed it. So here we are with the race result then. So Davison did manage to hold on against McLaughlin. McLaughlin was faster in the end. He set 38.1, which was the fastest lap we saw out, so he gets the bonus point for that. So him and Davison actually both finished on 20 points for this event. Elliott held on to that final podium place. Really solid race from him. Obviously you saw us have a battle for many laps, which was a lot of fun. Frustrating that I couldn't come out on top, but that's the way of racing. So really enjoyed that one, but really great race there from Elliott. Steve pipped us right on that last lap, which is so frustrating. He was the second quickest driver out there in terms of lap time with a 38.2. So he was sort of the best part of sort of 3-4 tenths quicker than we were on his best lap. We did improve our fastest lap down to a 38.5, but nearly every driver out there did improve their lap time in the race compared to quali. I don't know if that was just sort of fuel load coming down a little bit because the cars didn't get refueled from the first half-hour session that we had. So the cars were that little bit lighter and able to throw into the corners a little bit more as they were a bit more lightweight. Perhaps that made the difference. Perhaps it was tyres warming up. Perhaps everyone had just got that to grips with the track a little bit better. Perhaps a bit of an amalgamation of all those things. So it was Ed that came in behind me in P6, and he was quicker than I was as well. So it sort of falls back in line with what you saw in qualifying. McLaughlin was the quickest man out there. Jackson was right up there too. Davison is right up at the top as well as Blake. So those top four really were the fastest karts. Ed then just quicker than I was, which is exactly how it ended in qualifying. We had Wass then just in behind us in P7. Housey then came home P8. Gary ended up in the barriers a couple of times, particularly in that hairpin, still stating it was issues with the brakes on the kart. Obviously he's not going to choose to be out there. He was the other side of the barrier at one point because he simply couldn't get the kart to slow down, so his choice was either go through the barrier or go round it and park on the grass. And that was the point at which the lads swapped the kart for him into that infamous kart 10 that I had for a few laps during qualifying that was doing its best to put us left into a wall. So he had a bit of a torrid time with karts as well. Comes home P9, and obviously Chef didn't finish the race. He ended up going home. He was quicker than Gary was on his fastest lap, but he was just so frustrated with the way things were going, and yeah, took his ball and he went home. So shame to see that happen, but he ends up P10, taking home 11 points. What does that mean for the championship standings? Well, the gap at the top comes down again, doesn't it? It's now just 5 points between the two Dans right up at the top of the table as we head into round 5. Davison stays 9 points behind McLaughlin. He's now just 14 points off the lead. Cave does manage to jump Horton and Glover, who were both absent. Horton just a point behind Cave, but Cave is up to P4, with Glover just 2 points behind Horton. So this group here, from sort of Cave right down to Wass, are all really closely separated. So there's a point to Horton, then 2 points to Glover, 2 points behind to Blake, who obviously had a great race here. He's jumped Wass in the standings by a point. So 4th to 8 are really only separated by 6 points. It's really so close, which is brilliant to see. Obviously Horton and Glover will be coming back with a vengeance, as they are both set to attend for round 5, and they'll want to make amends for that and start climbing back up. Chef did lose a few points in this one. His gap to Miller is now 13, with Housley just 5 in behind, though rumours circulating that Housley isn't available due to injury for round 5, so that could be a bit of a loss for him. Jackson made up places, he's back up into the top 12, though again he's set to be absent from round 5, whereas Divine is set to attend round 5, so we could see a difference in there, and we could see Divine manage to jump back ahead of Jackson. Will he have enough in the tank to be able to jump Housley as well and get back into the top 11? We will find out. McDermott, Tracy, Miller, Schofield stay down at the bottom, and all 4 are also set to be absent for round 5, so there'll be no change down there. So round 5 is set to take place at Wakefield, so it's a new karting track for us. It's an indoor circuit that we've not raced at previously. So we'll have a 10-minute qualifying session there. And then depending on how busy the venue is, we'll either have 2 25-minute races, which both grid starts, or 1 50-minute race if it is particularly busy there and they need to get us done in one session. So there'll be a 10-minute qualifying and then either 1 or 2 races. So it's potentially a triple header over at Wakefield. It looks a really tight circuit. It's a new one for everyone. I don't think anyone's raced there before, so really exciting. Hopefully we'll get some good footage. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.